Welcome back to Nicki Woo Cozy Stories. I'm your host, Nicki. Tonight, we continue our cozy retelling of The Secret Garden. Episode 6, A Bit of Earth. It's like as if a body was in a dream. For a while, after Dickon said it, neither of them moved. The words seemed to settle in the garden as softly as falling dust, as though even the air itself held them carefully, not wishing to disturb them. The high stone walls stood quiet and still, and their bare branches stirred only slightly where the faintest breeze touched them. Mary stood, just as she was, her hands loosely at her side, her eyes moving slowly over the tangled beds and shadowed corners. It didn't feel the same as it had before. The first time she had come, everything had seemed strange and hidden and a little wild, as though she had stumbled upon something she was not meant to see. But now it felt quieter than that. Not empty, not forgotten, but waiting. Waiting in a way she was only just beginning to understand. Dickon drew in a slow breath and glanced toward the walls, as though remembering something all at once. "Thou must speak low," he said. His voice was gentle, but there was care in it now. "If we make too much noise, someone might hear and wonder what we're doing here." Mary turned to him at once. The thought of anyone else discovering the garden gave her a small, sharp feeling that she didn't like at all. "Yes," she said quickly, lowering her voice without thinking. "We mustn't let anyone know." "Aye," Dickon answered. "Best keep it to ourselves." There was nothing fearful in the way he said it, only a kind, quiet understanding, as though the garden itself were something alive and worth protecting. Mary felt it too. She stepped a little closer, without quite knowing why, and found herself speaking more softly still, as though the very air required it. Dickon moved toward one of the garden beds and crouched down, brushing aside a few of the dry, tangled stems with his hand. "Now then," he murmured, half to himself, "we'll see what's to be done." Mary came nearer and knelt beside him. The earth beneath her knees was cool and slightly damp, softer than she remembered, and she pressed her fingers lightly against it for a moment before looking back at what he was doing. Dickon picked up a little branch and snapped it easily between his fingers. It broke with a dry, quiet crack. "That's dead wood," he said. Then he reached for another stem, darker, firmer, and bent it gently. It didn't break. "But this has wick in it." Mary leaned closer at once. "Wick?" she repeated. "Aye," he said. "That means there's life in it still. Thou must leave it be. It'll come again when the weather turns." Mary studied the stem very carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly as she looked from one branch to another. Some were pale and dry, and others held a deeper color, almost hidden beneath the rough outer bark. "That one has wick," she said slowly, trying the word. Dickon glanced at her, and a quiet, pleased smile touched his face. "Aye," he said, "that's getting to know." He reached for his tools, then, and began to work, turning the soil with easy, practiced movements, loosening the earth and clearing away what was dead without disturbing what might yet grow. Mary watched him only a moment. Then she bent down and took up another tool. She didn't ask, she only began. At first, her movements were uncertain. The tool felt awkward in her hands, and she had to stop once or twice to look more closely before she pulled anything free. But she remembered what he said. Deadwood. Wick. She pressed the edge of the tool into the soil and drew it back, loosening the small weeds and lifting them gently away. Each time she paused, she looked carefully before touching anything that might still be alive. Dickon watched her for a little while without speaking. "Well now," he said at last, a note of quiet surprise in his voice. "Thou's been busy here before I came." Mary looked at him. "I pulled things up," she said, but I didn't know what was dead or what was not." Dickon gave a thoughtful nod, glancing over the ground she had already cleared. "Tha's done a fair bit right," he said. "Better than most would, not knowing." Mary felt the warmth of it at once. It was a curious feeling, something she had not known often enough to recognize quickly, but it settled somewhere deep and steady all the same. She bent her head again and went on working, a little more carefully now. The wind moved softly above the garden wall, stirring the higher branches so that they whispered faintly together. Somewhere nearby, the robin gave a low, cheerful chirp, as though it approved of what was being done. For a while, they worked without speaking, and Mary didn't feel the need to fill the silence. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt full. For a little while longer, they went on working side by side. The soil grew looser beneath their hands, and the small piles of weeds and dead stems began to gather in quiet heaps beside the beds. Mary found that her movements came more easily now, her hands learning what to do without so much stopping and thinking. Every now and then, she would pause and look closely before touching anything, searching for the hidden life Dickon had spoken of. Wick. She liked the word. It felt as though it belonged in the garden. Dickon worked steadily beside her, sometimes using his hands, sometimes his tools, moving with a kind of ease that made even the smallest tasks seem simple. After a time, he sat back on his heels and looked over what he had done. "Well now," he said, glancing from one cleared patch to another, "tha's made a proper beginning here." Mary looked up at once. "I didn't know I had," she said. "Aye, tha has," he answered. "There's many would have pulled up half o' what should be left, but tha didn't." Mary felt the warmth of it again, stronger this time. "I looked closely," she said, as though explaining it, "after you told me." Dickon nodded. "That's the way on it," he said. "Tha mun look sharp and take the time." Mary bent again to her work, but there was something different in the way she did it now. Not careful because she was unsure. Careful because she wanted to do it right. After a moment, she spoke again. "I think I'm getting stronger," she said. Dickon glanced at her quickly, as though he had been waiting to hear her say it. "Aye," he said at once, "tha is." Mary sat back slightly and looked down at her hands, turning them over as though they might show it. "I am not always tired now," she went on, "and I can walk longer, and I'm not so thin." Dickon's face brightened. "That's a grand thing," he said. "There's growing like everything else in spring." Mary looked at him. "Am I?" she asked. "Aye," he said. "And we'll have such a time together here, thee and me. There's a deal to do yet." There was something in the way he said it. Not hurried, not excited in a loud way, but full of quiet certainty. Mary felt it settle inside her. For the first time, the garden didn't feel like something she had only just found. It felt like something that would go on. She picked up her tool again. "Then we must go on," she said. Dickon gave a small laugh, not at her, but in simple pleasure. "Aye," he said, "that's right." They worked again after that, a little faster now, though still careful. Mary found herself noticing more than before, the way the soil crumbled when it was just right, the way the roots held fast when something was still alive, the way the wind moved differently across the open spaces and the thicker growth. It seemed to her that the garden was not so silent as it had first been. There were small sounds everywhere, if one listened. The soft scrape of the tool, the whisper of the branches, the faint rustle of something moving low among the stems. Dickon stopped suddenly and looked across one of the beds, his head tilting slightly. "It's a queer thing," he said. Mary looked up. "What is?" He pointed with his hand. "This garden's been shut up these 10 years, and yet," he paused, "it doesn't look like it's been left altogether." Mary looked across the ground. "What do you mean?" she asked. Dickon leaned forward and touched one of the trim stems. "Some of this has been cut back," he said. "Not wild-like. Not as it would grow if no one had set a hand to it." Mary's eyes widened slightly. "But no one comes here," she said. Dickon sat back again, his brows drawing together just a little. "Aye," he said slowly. "That makes it strange." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The garden seemed to grow still again, as though it too held the thought quietly. Then the robin gave a sudden bright chirp from somewhere above them. Dickon glanced up and smiled. "Well," he said lightly, "there's plenty for us to do, whether it's been touched or no." Mary nodded. "Yes," she said, and she bent once more to her work, though the question lingered quietly in her mind. For a while after that, they worked without speaking, but it was not the same quiet as before. It was easier now, settled and companionable, as though the garden had drawn them both into its gentle rhythm. Mary moved slowly along one of the beds, loosening the soil and pulling the weeds. Every now and then she paused, looking closely before touching anything, remembering what Dickon had shown her. Deadwood, wick. She liked knowing the difference. It made everything else feel less uncertain. After a little while, she sat back on her heels and looked across the garden. "There are many things here I don't know," she said. Dickon glanced over at her. "What's that?" he asked. "These plants," Mary said, pointing toward the small green shoots pushing up through the soil. "And the flowers that will come. I don't know their names." Dickon followed her gaze. "Some'll be bulbs," he said. "Snowdrops, maybe, or daffydowndillies come spring." Mary repeated it softly. Daffydowndillies. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When I was in India, there was a boy who used to sing a song to me." Dickon leaned slightly on his stool, listening. "A song?" Mary nodded. "His name was Basil. He was the son of an officer." She hesitated only a moment before going on. "He used to call me Mary, Mary, quite contrary." Dickon said nothing, only watched her. Mary went on, her voice thoughtful now. "He would say, 'Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow?'" She paused, then finished it more quietly. "With silver bells and cockle shells and marigolds all in a row." For a moment, the garden was still, and Mary looked down at the soil. "He meant it to tease me," she said, "because I didn't like things and because I didn't know anything about gardens." She lifted her head again. "I didn't know what the flowers were," she said, "or why he said them." Her gaze moved slowly across the beds around them. "But I think," she added after a moment, "he did not know very much either." There was a small pause, and then almost unexpectedly, Mary said, "They were more contrary than I was." Dickon blinked once. Then he gave a sudden warm laugh. Not loud, not sharp, just full of simple, genuine amusement. "Aye," he said, smiling. "Maybe they were." Mary looked at him, and this time she did not draw back. She held the moment. Dickon's smile lingered, but his voice softened as he glanced around the garden. "Well," he said, "there's no call for being contrary here." He nodded towards the beds, the small shoots, and the quiet branches above them. "Not with all this growing." Mary followed his gaze. The garden didn't look as bare to her now. There were small signs everywhere, if one knew how to see them. "They will grow," she said. "Aye," Dickon answered. "Everything will, come spring, if it's tended." Mary leaned forward slightly, looking more closely at the small green shoots. "They are alive," she said. Dickon nodded. "They've wicked 'em," he said. Mary smiled. Just a little. Wick. She liked the word better now than she had before. Nearby, the robin fluttered down onto a low branch, watching them with bright, quick eyes. Mary glanced toward it. He always comes, she said. Aye, Dickon answered. He knows where he's welcome. Mary looked at the bird for a moment, then she bent again to her work. And this time, there was something different in the way she moved. Not just careful, not just curious, but quietly, at home. They worked on a little while longer after that. The quiet between them had changed again. It was no longer only careful or curious. It was easy. Mary moved from one bed to another, loosening the soil and clearing away what didn't belong. Dickon worked nearby, sometimes speaking, sometimes not, but always with the same steady patience. The garden didn't feel so still now. There were small sounds everywhere. The soft turn of the earth, the whisper of the wind above the walls, the faint rustle of something moving low among the branches. Mary found that she no longer hurried. She looked, she chose, she worked. After a time, she sat back slightly and brushed the loose soil from her hands. I like this garden, she said. Aye, Dickon answered. I like working in it, she went on. Aye, he said again. Mary hesitated just a little. The words felt new, but not as difficult as they might have once been. And, she said, I like you. Dickon looked at her. There was no surprise in his face, no laughter, only that same quiet steadiness. I like thee, he said. He said it simply, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. Mary felt something settle in her again, something warm and certain. She didn't look away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Dickon glanced up towards the sky. It'll be getting on, he said. Thou'll have to be back for thy dinner. Mary stood at once. She had almost forgotten. Yes, she said. I must go. She looked around the garden as though she didn't quite want to leave it. Dickon rose as well. I'll stay a bit, he said. I've my dinner with me. And as he spoke, he reached into his pocket and drew out a small cloth bundle, well wrapped and neatly folded. Mary watched him as he opened it. Inside were 2 thick pieces of coarse bread and a slice of bacon laid between them. The bacon wasn't much, but it was enough. It's a fine bit today, Dickon said with quiet satisfaction. Sometimes it's not but bread, but today there's bacon. He spoke of it as though it were something to be glad of, and Mary could hear that he meant it. I'll eat it here, he went on, settling himself easily near the bed they had been clearing, and do a bit more work after. He broke the bread apart carefully, not wasting so much as a crumb. Then he pulled away a small piece of bacon and held it between his fingers. Well then, he said softly, glancing upward, thou'll be wanting thy share. The robin came at once. It fluttered down from a branch with a quick, bright movement and landed not far from his hand. Dickon stayed very still. The bird hopped closer, then closer still. At last it took the small piece neatly from his fingers. Mary watched it closely, her eyes wide and quiet with interest. It's not afraid, she said. Nay, Dickon answered gently. Why should it be? He broke another small piece, this time a little smaller, and set it on the ground beside him. The robin darted down again, quick and sure, and took it up at once. He knows, Dickon said. He knows where there's kindness. Mary looked at the bird, and then to Dickon. There was something in the way he spoke. Not proud, not showing, but simply knowing, as though it were the most natural thing in the world to share. Mary stood very still for a moment. Then she said, You'll come again? Aye, Dickon answered, if thou wants me. Mary looked at him steadily. I do, she said. Dickon gave a small nod. Then I will, he said. Mary turned and began to walk toward the hidden door. The ivy brushed softly against her sleeve as she passed through. For a few steps she went on without looking back, and then, almost without thinking, she turned. Dickon sat down again and was breaking his bread, and the robin hopping nearer to him without fear, waiting for another small piece. The garden moved quietly around them. as though it knew them both. Mary stood there for just a moment longer. Then she slipped out the door and let the ivy fall gently back into place behind her. Mary hadn't gone far from the door when she stopped. Her hand rested lightly against the ivy wall, and she stood very still, as though something had just come back to her all at once. Then she turned. She slipped back in through the leaves again and stepped quietly into the garden. Dickon was where she had left him. He had just settled himself again and was breaking his bread, the robin hopping close beside him. He looked up at once when he heard her. "They's back again," he said. Mary came toward him quickly. "I forgot something," she said. There was small urgency in her voice now, something different from before. Dickon set the bread down in his lap and waited. Mary stood in front of him, her hands held together. "This garden," she said, lowering her voice without thinking. "It mustn't be found." Dickon's expression didn't change. "Aye," he said quietly. "No one must know," Mary went on. "If they did, they might take it away." She paused, then added more quickly. "They might lock it again, or send me away, or—" She stopped, as though she could not quite say all that she imagined. Dickon watched her steadily. Mary took a small breath. "I don't know if boys can keep secrets," she said. The words came out plainly, but there was something careful in them, as though she had been thinking about it for some time. Dickon didn't answer at once. He only looked at her. Mary went on, a little more quickly now. "It is mine," she said. "I found it. I didn't know anything before, but now I do, and I don't want anyone to take it from me." Her voice had grown stronger, not loud, but certain. She looked at him very directly. "Can you keep a secret?" she asked. There was a small silence. The robin hopped closer to Dickon's knee, watching. Dickon glanced down at it for just a moment. Then he looked at Mary. "If thou found a bird's nest," he said slowly, "and it had eggs in it, would thou tell anyone where it was?" Mary's answer came at once. "No." She didn't hesitate. Dickon nodded. "Then that's thy answer," he said. Mary stood very still. She understood him. Not just the words, but what he meant. It was not about promises. It was about knowing. "I shall not tell anyone," she said quietly. "Nor me," Dickon answered. Mary let out a small breath she had not known she was holding. The tightness in her chest eased. For a moment, she said nothing. She gave a small nod. "That is enough," she said. Dickon picked up his bread again, as though nothing more needed to be said. The robin hopped closer once more, waiting patiently. Mary turned again towards the door. This time, she didn't stop. The ivy brushed softly behind her as she slipped through, and when she stepped out into the path again, she didn't feel uncertain. The garden was still hers, and now it was his, too. Mary went quickly back along the path toward the house. She didn't walk as she had done when she first came to Misselthwaite, slow and unwilling. She went faster now, not running, but not lingering either. By the time she reached the house, her cheeks were warm and there was a brightness in her eyes that had not been there before. She went in at once and made her way upstairs. Martha was in the room when she entered. "Well now," Martha said, turning, "thou's been out a good while." Mary came straight toward her. "I've been in the garden," she said. "Aye," Martha answered. "I thought there would be." Mary didn't stop. "I saw Dickon," she said. Martha's hands stilled. "They did," she said. Mary nodded. "Yes." There was only the smallest pause, and then she said it, quite plainly. "He is beautiful." Martha stared at her for a moment. "Beautiful," she repeated. Mary went on at once. "Yes," she said. "He has a round face, and his eyes are very blue, and he has a wide mouth, and he smiles all the time." Martha gave a little laugh. "Aye," she said. "He's a big mouth, Dickon is. But he's a good lad." Mary didn't seem to hear the teasing. "And he is strong," she went on, and he knows everything about the garden and about birds and animals and how things grow. Martha's expression softened. Aye, she said. There's none better than him for that. Mary took a breath and continued, still a little breathless with it all. He showed me how to tell if things are alive. He calls it wick, and he knows what must be left and what must be taken up, and how to work without hurting anything. Martha nodded. Aye, she said, that's Dickon. Then she added, with a small smile, Mother says his eyes are so blue because he's always looking up at the sky and after the birds. Mary seemed to consider this. Yes, she said, he does look at things that way. She stood still for a moment. Then she added, I like him. Martha smiled more openly now. Well then, she said, that's a good thing. Mary looked at her. He said he liked me, she said. Martha gave a small nod. Aye, she said, he would. Mary turned slightly, as though she were thinking again of the garden. He's not like other boys, she said. Martha shook her head. Nay, she said, he's not like most folk. Mary was quiet for a moment. No, she said softly, he is not. There was a pause. Then Martha moved again, as though remembering her work. Well now, she said, it'll be time for thy dinner. Mary did not protest. She only nodded. Yes, she said. And as Martha moved about the room, Mary stood for a moment longer, the brightness still in her face. It didn't leave her. Mary sat down to her dinner without being told twice. That alone would have surprised anyone who had known her before. She didn't push the plate away. She didn't complain. She didn't sit staring at it as though it were something set before her as her punishment. She ate. Not quickly, not greedily, but steadily, as though she were beginning to understand that food was something meant to be taken in, not resisted. Martha watched her for a moment or two without speaking. Well now, she said at last, that's getting a good appetite. Mary didn't look up. I'm hungry, she said simply. Martha gave a small nod. Aye, she said, that's how it should be. Mary went on eating. The room felt warm and quiet, and for a little while there was nothing in her mind but the simple act of finishing what was set before her. After a moment, Martha spoke again. Dickon will be fair pleased, she said. Mary looked up. Why? She asked. Because tha's eating, Mary answered. He's fond of seeing things grow, whether it's flowers or folk. Mary considered this. I am growing stronger, she said. Aye, Martha said. That is. Mary went on eating for a moment longer. Then she said, I should go out again tomorrow. Martha smiled. I don't doubt it, she said. There was a pause. Then Martha's expression changed just slightly. Well, Martha said, a little more carefully now, there's something I've got to tell thee. Mary looked at her. What is it? Martha hesitated only a moment. Mr. Craven has come home. The words seemed to settle heavily into the room. Mary's hand stilled where it rested on the table. For a moment, she said nothing. Then, oh, she said. It was not loud, but it was enough. She looked down again at her plate. The warmth she had felt seemed to draw back from her all at once. He will not want me here, she said. Martha frowned slightly. Nay, she said, that's not so. Mary did not seem to hear her. He will be cross, she went on, and I shall be sent away or shut up in my room. Martha shook her head. He's not like that, she said. Not as thou thinks. Mary looked up quickly. He will not like me, she said. Martha stepped a little closer. He's not one for noticing much, she said, and he's been away a long time. He's not coming back to trouble about thee. Mary was not comforted. She sat very still. The room felt different now, smaller, colder. The garden seemed far away. I don't want to see him, she said. Martha was quiet for a moment. Then she said gently, Well, I may have to." Mary did not answer. She looked down at her hands. For a little while, neither of them spoke. At last Martha moved again, gathering the things from the table. "It'll be all right," she said, though not quite as lightly as before. Mary said nothing, but as she sat there, the brightness that had followed her in from the garden just faded a little, and in its place, something older began to return. For a while after dinner, Mary didn't move. She sat very still, her hands resting in her lap, her thoughts turning slowly and uneasily. Mr. Craven had come home. The words would not settle. They seemed to hover somewhere near her, never quite becoming real, and yet never leaving her. The house itself felt different, quieter, as though it were listening. Martha moved quietly about the room, putting things to rights, but she did not speak about it again. Mary was glad of that. She didn't wish to talk. She only wished to sit and think, and yet her thoughts would not come in any clearer order. He will not like me. He will be angry. He will send me away. She did not know why she felt so certain of it, but she did. Suddenly, the door flew open. Miss Medlock came in briskly, her skirts rustling sharply, her eyes quick and businesslike. "Well," she said, "what are you doing sitting there?" Mary, startled, stood up at once. "Mr. Craven wants to see you," Mrs. Medlock went on, "and he wants you now." Mary's heart gave a quick, hard beat. "Now?" she repeated. "Yes, now," Miss Medlock said shortly. "And you are not fit to be seen in that state." She looked Mary up and down with a critical eye. "Your hair is all in a tangle from the wind," she said. "And that dress. No, that will never do." Martha had already stepped forward. "I'll see to her, ma'am," she said quickly. "You'd best," Mrs. Medlock replied. "And be quick about it. Mr. Craven doesn't like to be kept waiting." She moved toward the window, then turned back again. "He was told about the child," she added, "and he wishes to see her for himself." Mary stood very still. The words seemed to fall around her without quite touching her. Mrs. Medlock gave one more sharp look. "Well, don't stand there staring," she said. "Make haste." Then she swept out of the room as quickly as she had entered. The door shut behind her. For a moment there was silence. Then Martha let out a small breath. "Well now," she said softer again, "we must get thee ready." Mary didn't answer. She sat down when Martha guided her to a chair. Martha took up the brush at once and began to smooth Mary's hair with quick, careful strokes. "Hold still," she said. "We've no time to lose." Mary held herself very straight. She didn't fidget. She didn't complain. But inside, everything felt tight and uncertain. Martha worked quickly, parting and smoothing, drawing the hair neatly into place. "There now," she murmured more gently. "They'll do well enough." She reached for Mary's best dress and helped her into it, fastening the buttons with nimble fingers. "All tidy," she said at last, stepping back. Mary stood. She felt as though she were no longer quite herself, as though she had been ranged into a place, like something to be looked at. Martha gave her a small, encouraging nod. "It'll be all right," she said quietly. Mary didn't know if it was true, but she said nothing. There were footsteps again in the corridor. Mary turned toward the door. This time, she didn't wait. She walked forward on her own, and though her heart beat quickly, she held her head a little higher than before, as though she would not let herself be afraid. Mary followed Mrs. Medlock down the long corridor without speaking. Her footsteps sounded small against the polished floors, and the great house seemed to grow quieter the farther they went. It was as though everything were listening. "Walk properly," Miss Medlock said at once, "and do not stare about." "I'm not going to stare," Mary answered. At last they stopped before a door. Mrs. Medlock knocked. There was a pause. Then a low voice said, "Come in." Mrs. Medlock opened the door. "Here's the child, sir." Mary stepped inside. The room was large and dim, with a low fire burning at the grate. A man sat in a chair near it. He didn't rise. He turned his head and looked at her. Mary stood still. This must be Mr. Craven. He was not as she imagined. He didn't look harsh. He looked pale and tired, as though he had been unhappy for a long time. His eyes rested on her quietly. After a moment he said, "Come here." Mary went to him and stood near his chair. He looked at her for some time. "Are they taking good care of you?" he asked. "Yes," Mary said. "You look stronger than I expected," he said. "I am stronger," she answered. He watched her a moment longer, then gently, "Don't look so frightened." Mary hadn't known she looked frightened, but something in his voice made her feel less so. "I'm not frightened," she said, and now she almost believed it. He leaned back slightly. "Mrs. Medlock tells me you have been quite alone," he said. Mary said nothing. Then after a moment, he spoke again. "I have been told something else," he said slowly. "A woman came to me in town." Mary looked at him. "She was Martha's mother," he said. "Mrs. Sowerby." Mary's face changed at once. "She is kind," she said quickly. "Yes," he said quietly. "She is." He was silent for a moment. "She told me I ought to look to the child who had been left here," he went on. "She said no one should be left alone so much." Mary listened. "She spoke plainly," he added. "But she had reason." He paused. "My wife," he said more softly now, "was once very kind to her, to their children." Mary didn't move. "She had not forgotten," he said. Something in his voice had changed. It was no longer only tired, it was remembering. Mary spoke, a little more quickly now. "She said I ought to go out and play," she said. "That I should run and grow strong." He looked at her more closely. "She is a sensible woman," he said. Mary nodded. "I don't want a nurse," she said. "And I'm too old for a nurse. And I'm too young for a governess." He raised his eyebrows slightly. "Too young," he said. "Yes," Mary answered. "I only want to play." She stopped, then said more simply, "I couldn't play in India." The room was very still. He did not speak at once. Then he said, "No?" It wasn't a question. Mary stood quietly. Something had changed between them now. "If you want anything," he said after a moment, "you may ask for it." Mary looked at him. Anything. No one had ever said that to her before. "Would you like toys?" he asked. "A doll? Or books? Or things to amuse you?" Mary shook her head. "No," she said. "No," he repeated. Mary thought. Then she said slowly, "I would like a bit of earth." "A bit of earth?" he said. "Yes," Mary answered, "to plant things in." He looked at her closely, and then something in his face changed. "You remind me of someone," he said quietly. Mary didn't know who, but she felt the meaning of it. "As you wish," he said. "You shall have it." Mary felt something warm rise inside of her. "Thank you," she said. He made a slight movement with his hand. "Go out of doors as much as you like," he said. "You may have the run of the gardens." Mary's eyes lifted. "And you may do what you please," he added. The words settled around her slowly. "You may have whatever you want." Mary stood very still. Then she nodded. She turned to go. At the door, she paused for just a moment. When she looked back, he had turned his face away again. But the room didn't feel quite so cold. Mary slipped out quietly and closed the door behind her. Mary didn't walk slowly on her way back. She went quickly down the corridor, almost running. Something inside her had changed. The house didn't feel so large now. It didn't feel so still. She pushed open the door and went in. Martha looked up at once. "Well," she said, "what happened?" Mary didn't stop. "He's not cross," she said. "He's not cross at all." Martha blinked in surprise. "No?" she said. No, Mary said again, almost breathless. He's the kindest man I ever saw. Martha stared at her. Well now, she said, that's not what most would say. Mary shook her head. They don't know, she said quickly. They don't know him. She began to move about the room as she spoke, unable to stand still. He is pale, she said, and he looks tired, but he's kind. Martha watched her with growing interest. And what did he say? She asked. He asked if they were taking care of me, Mary said, and he told me not to look so frightened. Martha smiled a little. Well, she said, that sounds like him, when he's minded to be. Mary went on, hardly stopping for breath. And he said I might have anything I wanted. Anything? Yes, Mary answered. And what did you ask for? Mary stopped. A bit of earth, she said. Martha laughed outright. Well now, she said, of all things. I didn't want toys, Mary said quickly, and I didn't want anything else. Martha shook her head, still smiling. And what did he say to that? He said I might have it, Mary answered, and he said I might go into the gardens and do what I pleased. Martha looked at her more closely now. Well, she said, that's a fine thing indeed. Mary nodded. I'm going out again, she said. Martha gave a small laugh. I don't doubt it, she said. Mary was already moving toward the door. She didn't stop to say more. She only went. The outside air felt wide and fresh, and the sky stretched pale above the gardens. Mary walked quickly along the paths, then faster. Then she began to run. She reached the ivy-covered wall and slipped through the hidden door. The garden lay quiet, still, as though it had been waiting. Mary looked around her. Dickon? She called softly. There was no answer. She walked farther in. The branches moved slightly in the wind. The robin flew down and settled nearby, watching her. Where is he? Mary said. She went to the place where they had been working, and then she saw it. Something lay on the ground. Mary bent down and picked it up. It was a small piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. The writing was rough, but clear enough. He had been called away. But he would come again. Mary held the paper in her hands. The garden was still. The robin hopped closer. Mary smiled. He would come back. And tomorrow, there would be more to do. And now, the house grows quiet once more. The long corridors of Misselthwaite Manor settle into stillness, and the last of the day fades softly beyond the wide Yorkshire moors. In her room, a young girl lies beneath warm blankets, her thoughts drifting through the strange and gentle happenings of the day. A quiet meeting in a shadowed room, a voice that was not unkind, a promise freely given, and a small, hopeful beginning taking root in the earth. Beyond the walls, the hidden garden rests in silence, the branches still, the soil waiting. And somewhere, not far away, a boy who understands growing things will return again. But those moments will come in time. And when you return, we'll step back into the garden together. For now, the house is quiet, the moor is calm, and the night settles softly over everything. So let the stillness of the manor drift gently around you. Let the quiet promise of the garden carry your thoughts far away, and allow the story to rest here for tonight. Sleep now. You are safe. You are loved. You've been listening to Nicki Cozy Stories, written by Nicole T. Woodard. May your dreams be gentle, and your sleep be deep.